Hello and welcome to Team Draft Super League. Now, I'm not one to generally get too excited. I'm pretty even-keeled, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't excited for tonight. This is going to be an incredible night of Magic. And to start off with, I'm joined by Kai Bude. Kai, how you doing?
Pretty good, thank you.
So, what we're going to be watching tonight is, of course, going to be a team draft, but something we haven't been able to see on any of the Super Leagues in the past, and really that often at all. We're going to get to watch Jon Finkel, and we're going to get to watch him, try to navigate the draft from beginning to end. We're going to watch him build his deck, and then we're going to get commentary from Jon Finkel and the other matches that he's not playing. So this is kind of an awesome night of Magic down that road. But first off, you get me and Kai. I'm okay. Kai's great. He's probably the best player in the history of Germany, and one of the best players of all time. So
top three.
I mean, maybe the best player in the history of Hamburg. Is that fair?
Again, that would be the same thing, though. That would be another top three because.
Okay. Well, I think that maybe coming in, it was a tough list. You had your Patrick Mellos, your Andre Constanzers, your Marco Blooms, but by the time you got into year like 8 or 9 of your career, it was pretty good. You put up some results. So
it's these guys. All these guys quit. I mean, I was just the last one standing.
Well, be that as it may, you've put up a few good results, and it's definitely exciting to have you in any of the Super Leagues. It's been a little bit of a break from you. You didn't get to play the Vintage Super League last year. You're definitely missed. Kai is, of course, a phenomenal Magic player, but he might be my favorite person to do commentary with. I mean, he's definitely doesn't hold anything back, and just, of course, has incredible insights always.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about this one, though. Like, I've been very good at Team Limited, but that's only Team Rochester. I've done not that many Team Booster drafts, actually. So,
well, I mean, for those who don't know, Kai, of course, was part of the Phoenix Foundation, along with Marco Bloom and Dirk Babarowski, the most successful Team Limited team of all time, winning basically every event they entered. I mean, you guys lost one top 4 to Brock Bottom or the Brockefellers, whatever they were at the time, Huey Jensen's team with Matt Lindia and Brock Parker, but basically an unstoppable team. That format had a lot of similarities. It was 3-on-3. You also would only play one round. You would play against your opponent. And it was Team Rochester Draft, which a lot of newer players have never played before. Rochester Draft is, of course, each booster getting opened face up, and then players going around the table and selecting a card. It turns around table. So once the first person opens the pack, it goes around in a circle and then bounces back the other way. This is, of course, different. This is Booster Draft. Everyone's familiar with
the difference also is that in Team Rochester Drafts, the teams were sitting next to each other.
Right.
I've always been wondering why that was the case. You probably could have done it with an A-B sorting, right?
Yeah, you definitely could have done it. That's actually interesting. I don't know how many people on the planet have ever tried that. But
probably not many. But.
Yeah, so of course what Kai's referring to is like all 3 teammates sat next to each other. So if the person on the far right on your team opened a pack, you're not going to cut your teammate. You know exactly where everything's going. All the picks are face up. So there's a ton of strategy there. There's a lot involved. Team Booster Draft is definitely very different. Although
some people have cut their teammates. You couldn't talk back then, and like there was a time limit. I've definitely seen it happen, and the teammate was not happy at that point.
Yeah, I can imagine not being happy if I got cut by my teammate. But, in Team Booster Draft, it's certainly a common thing. You don't know what your teammates are drafting. You don't know what your opponents are drafting. It's all about making the best guess you can. You know what you've passed. You know what the best card in each pack that you've taken is and what the best card you've passed is. So you know what colors you're looking to go and what colors you're looking to cut. And then we'll just kind of see what happens.
No, you know what the best card in the pack is. With John or me. We can't be that certain. That's the thing.
John does have a few good references. He's got some talented players he can ask. What are these pick orders? What are the best cards to take? He might not go down that path, but he definitely has those options available to him. I know that people have definitely argued quite a bit about pick orders in this format, so it gets extra interesting. Like we saw Ben Stark do commentary on draft, and then we saw his draft viewer last week. We're of course in week 3 of Team Draft Super League, and a lot of the differences, it's just some people have a different philosophy in general, but a lot of the differences come in, the evaluation of cards. Like if you think Merciless Javelineer is a bomb, you're going to rate it in a completely different scale than something that like a 2/2 for 2, where you kind of view that as a slightly above average common. So, it just kind of depends on where your card evaluation goes. Like if you have a 3/2 flying death touch creature for 1 as being, worse than an average common, which some people apparently do, then your draft order is going to be completely different than someone else.
Yeah, I think the whole Pension team had like different evaluations of the cards than you guys, but we did like the 1 mana 3/2 death touch flyers.
Yeah, that's a pretty decent card. So let's start off by going over what some of the rules are here in Team Draft Super League. All right, so we've already kind of touched on a lot of these things right now, but it's 6-player draft pod, so 3 people on each team. In this instance, we're going to have team limited resources versus team gamers helping gamers, and we're going to get into those in just a second. But it's 6-player draft pods. Teams will alternate seats, so you're not sitting next to any of your teammates. The person to your right of you is an opponent. The person to your left of you is an opponent. During deck building, you can talk to your teammates. So you can ask, hey, what'd you pass? What should I be aware of? What colors are people? And then you can kind of figure out where cards went. Like if hey, I opened a Magma Spray and a Gust Walker, which one did you see third pick? And you know exactly what the person took second pick between you. So you get a lot of information that way. Memorization is, a useful skill to have, but you generally have a pretty good sense of where people are in each draft. So being able to pre-sideboard in some of these matchups, like if all 3 of your opponents are playing a bunch of flying creatures, you pass, a card like Stinging Shot, or just something that deals with 1 toughness creatures, or maybe a disenchant effect. All these cards can become much more valuable to play in your main deck.
I do have one question. I've watched the first 2 episodes, but do people know, like let's say John is playing against the guy on his right. Does he know he's playing against the guy on his right? Yes.
So the players know where everyone is at the table and who they're passing to, and then this will all be known. It will be very much the same as if you were drafting in person. So John will know that one of the 3 players on the other team, he knows which one is on his right and which one is on his left. They'll know that during deck building. They'll know when they play. And actually a wrinkle in Team Draft Super League that's different from a normal team draft, you'll see players, when you're playing in a team draft, you'd be like, my opponent cast Fumigate. Be aware they have a Wrath effect. In this, because of course we're streaming it and the players are going to be doing commentary, everyone's going to get deckless after the first round. So the first round, we're going to have John Finkel on camera playing against his opponent. They won't know what each other have in their decks, but for round 2 and every round afterwards, everyone will have full information, what their opponents are playing in their main deck, what they have in the sideboard. Of course, you don't necessarily know how they're going to sideboard, but you will have that information. So we'll see players make some pretty advanced plays. Just what you need to play around. It becomes very much that perfect information is pretty strong.
More important, what they don't have. I think that usually comes up more often. Like you just know that there's no combo trick for 1 mana or whatever.
Right. This was a big thing last week. My team, Team Channel Fireball, played against the Scottsdale Foundation, and my match against Paul Rietzel, he just only had 1 instant. Like there wasn't a lot to play around in his green-black deck, and so my blocks became very easy in instances where if I was just playing him on the Pro Tour, it would have been extremely difficult to figure out how to maximize my block. So that is definitely a wrinkle that we have here. Let's check out our teams.
There was a discussion on Twitter earlier as to how many drafts this team have done overall.
Yep.
I think the common opinion was that the limited resources guys probably did 5 times as many drafts of the format as the Gamers Helping Gamers crew.
That could easily be correct. I mean, this team is made up of Paul Cheon, Marshall Sutcliffe, and Kenji Yoshira. Probably more well known for their streaming and their podcasting, and they're doing commentary in the booth. But 3 great players in their own right. They've all had success on all levels. Paul Cheon was, I believe, just the consensus best player in the world for a period of time. I mean, it's hard for me and Kai to comment because we weren't playing at the time, and Kai was the best player.
I didn't pay any attention to that.
But Paul, widely considered the best player without a Pro Tour top 8. He's got tons of success, though, on the Pro Tour and the Grand Prix level. A former U.S. national champion. He's played, a former World's team champion. He's won a bunch of Grand Prix. Marshall, just plays a ton of Magic. I mean, he's a professional, commentator at this point. He does a podcast, one of the best podcasts in the world, of course, Limited Resources. And, he just gets to do a ton of drafts. Like that's part of his job, is having knowledge of these formats so that he can talk about them on his podcast. And so he gets to play a ton of Magic, and he's got, just all the resources in the world to kind of become great. Like he talks to, the best players in the world. He does a podcast with Luis, who is at least decent. And then, of course, there's Kenji, who streams more than anyone on the planet, does a ton of limited. This is where, what Kai was talking about, them doing just so many more drafts than gamers helping gamers. This is what they do. They play Magic kind of all day, every day as their job. And, we've got New York bankers on the other side of the equation. Like, let's take a look at a team gamers helping gamers. So, Chris Bakula, John Finkel, Jamie Park. I mean, this team is excellent. They all have at least 3 virtual top 8s, and John, I think, has even more than that.
John and Jamie was a very serious preparation for this event. John was mainly taking selfies in Venice and Abu Dhabi last weekend, and Jamie was doing the same thing in Puerto Rico. So
they're ready to go, fired up.
Cards for the last week.
Well, the thing is, when you're, players that, like John and Jamie, I believe, are 2 of maybe 3 players who have Pro Tour top 8s in all 3 decades that Magic's been around. I don't know how long the list is, but I'm fairly sure that all 3 of them are on it, or that both of them are on it. And
it's probably just Chapin as a 3rd person, right?
That was exactly what I was thinking, but I'm not 100% on that quote.
Like, depending if you count 2010, I'm in the club, but like my last top 8 was 2010. And that probably
I'm sure you'll get there again someday. I mean, Magic's a tough game.
We're waiting for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, you got a couple of years. Are you showing up at any more of the Pro Tours that you know of?
Probably not anytime soon. I mean, they keep scheduling. Like, for me, the summer PT is the easiest to attend, and they keep putting it to like Australia and Japan, which are really places that I don't want to travel to. So that makes it a bit more annoying.
Yeah. Let's look at what our schedule is going to be going forward for the Team Draft Super League.
But yeah, even like especially John in limited, like I think John is by far the most talented player. Like if you had like a new format and you would have to pick anyone to fight for mankind or whatever, you would always pick John, I think. The problem with John is that he doesn't have that much time and he doesn't play all that much. But
no, I mean, this is actually interesting. When the team series got announced for Magic, I was trying to look, of course, Team Puzzle Quest is fantastic. They've got a bunch of Hall of Famers, and the 2 players who aren't in the Hall of Fame are Andrew Cunha and Reed Duke, are obviously outstanding. So trying to look at some of the stats, try to look at various ways to compare the teams. I'm like, well, maybe if we just look at just the last decade, because, a lot of my team for Channel Fireball Ice put up a lot of results in the last decade or so. And, maybe that will make things more interesting. Because if you want to compare Pro Tour top 8s to John Finkel, you can't find a 3-man team. Like, it's hard to find a 3-man team that can just match John in top 8s. That's how absurd it is. So I'm like, all right, let's just look at the last decade. And so we can get, like, a little bit more accurate, interesting stats. No, John's resume in the last decade is phenomenal. He'd 100% be elected into the Hall of Fame without his, dozen top 8s before that. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, John actually doesn't have only a top 8 in every decade. He probably has a Hall of Fame career in each decade. You can probably
that'd be really hard to argue against.
All 3 decades, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, John. We've had arguments about who the best player of all time is. Some people have even thrown your name onto the list. But yeah, I mean, John's tough to beat. I mean, the things that he's doing, and the fact that he has come back to the game, and he does not play as much Magic as, I mean, he plays nowhere near as much Magic as his opponents tonight, but he just doesn't play as much Magic as kind of the average Magic player. At least that's the impression I get, and the results that he puts up are just consistently phenomenal.
I think one of his PT wins was just like a format that he pretty much hadn't drafted much at all, right? Like the one in Kuala Lumpur, I don't think he was very prepared for that tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I guess natural talent is pretty useful.
Do we have Tom Martell doing the video now, or?
Yes.
Yeah, like that's actually pretty sad because the last PT I played, that was my first sanctioned loss against John. I was 3-0 against him before. And then, I mean, like there's skill games, and then you just play a Marvel and put an Ulamog into play on turn 4. And that's what
Which
John
one is the
needed
skill
to
game?
get his first win. That's how he got on the board.
I don't see what the problem is.
Seems pretty unfair to me.
Well, it worked for me. I enjoyed that a couple weeks ago. I think it took a lot of skill because I chose to put those cards in my deck, and that was really smart. Some people chose not to do that.
Yeah.
Like they actually went like, "Hey, this card Aetherworks Marvel and this card Ulamog, you can just play them." And some people went like, "No, I'm not going to do that." And I said, "Yes, I am going to do that." And so,
well,
you can't really fault anything that happens after that. I mean,
half an hour before deck lists were up is what I heard.
Well, that was just tuning the final version and making sure that that was what I wanted to play. And I decided that yes, I would like to play that because it is ridiculous, and I should.
That's actually another reason for me not to attend the next Pro Tour, because I really want to rotate this whole garbage block out. I mean,
you don't even have a top 8 this decade. Maybe this is what you need, but I mean, you can register these cards. They'll let you do it.
I don't own many cards, but I own 4 Ulamog, so maybe that's just like. I think Owen stole 1 actually, so yeah, I'm probably down to 3. I think Owen stole 1.
Someone needs to open Packrat and Mizium orders, and I feel like that's like Luis is not playing the Pro Tour right now, but it sounds like our players are ready, so we're gonna go watch John Finkel draft Magic.